Hello, I'm Catherine Comden, Behavior Program Manager at Willamette Humane Society in Salem, Oregon. Have you ever been afraid of a dog because he might bite? Have you ever wondered what your own dog is thinking or feeling? Have you heard that some dogs bite for no reason? On today's show, I'll teach you an easy way to read and understand canine body language. You won't have to wonder what your dog is feeling, you'll know. And you'll discover easy things that you can do to reduce aggression in every encounter with dogs on this week's Pets and People. Thank you for tuning in today. As a canine behavior coach, I've had the opportunity to help many people with their dogs who are experiencing some kind of fear or aggression. And I'll often have people tell me that one reason or another they felt the dog was biting out of the blue. They weren't able to see the signals that the dog gave. And so today I want to talk to you a little bit about canine aggression, fear, and body language so that you can understand dogs better, feel safer, and maybe even learn how to train your own dog to be more comfortable in certain situations. When a dog is being aggressive, there are two main things that you need to think about. There are triggers that are happening in his environment usually that are causing the fear or aggression. And then there are the different behaviors that the dog is going to offer you to show that he's uncomfortable. The thing that I really want to make clear today is that behavior is predictable and that the dog will most often try just about anything he can to get out of a situation before escalating to aggression. You can know the signals that your dog is showing and learn that you can change his behavior without a lot of undue stress or concern about a bite. So the first thing that we need to do is to define the triggers that cause your dog to feel uncomfortable. And I'm sure you know this already, but make a list. When do you see your dog trying to avoid a situation or acting aggressively? And it might be anything from having a visitor come over to a grooming situation where you're trying to brush him or comb him, maybe trim his nails. You might see your dog acting a little differently around certain toys or around certain people in the home. Or maybe he wants to guard his space where he sleeps at night or a space on the couch. In any case, all of these things can be labeled triggers. They're the things that cause the dog to be aggressive or to feel uncomfortable. For all of the triggers that you've identified, you can go through a training protocol to help your dog feel more comfortable. And this is a lot of what I do at the Humane Society, is I help coach people through these training procedures. We use counter conditioning and desensitization, working in concert to help your dog feel more comfortable. And I'll have people say, well, my dog is growling at the babysitter or whatever. And I always say, yay, great for the dog. I'd actually rather have him growling because he's going to be able to tell us then that something's uncomfortable and you can make an adjustment so that he can be more comfortable. If a dog is not growling or if he's been punished for growling, a lot of times we can stop the growling, but it doesn't change the underlying emotional response. So what we need to do is change how he feels about that situation, and then he'll stop the growling because he feels better, and then his behavior will also improve. So using desensitization, I can look at those triggers and I can say, okay, let's make the dog feel more comfortable. For example, if the dog is always barking when the doorbell rings or always barking when a guest comes in, well, the triggers might be the doorbell itself. It might be the place of the door, that actually being in that place. It might be the certain people are coming in that they're afraid of. There's probably also an arousal level in your home, right? Everybody gets excited and runs to the door. And all of these things can be identified as triggers, and then we can desensitize the dog from reacting to those triggers. So they can start very, very simply, and I like to just start with just one of the places. Let's teach the dog what to do at the door instead of barking. So I have the client bring the dog to the door and we practice a sit stay or a down stay and we feed lots of treats there. Now that doorway begins to mean a fun game as opposed to let's get all aroused and excited. Another way to work on that would be to just have a little soft knock somewhere else in the house, so soft that the dog can barely perceive it. And before he barks or responds to that knock, you drop a load of chicken and he gets to eat all the chicken. And so every time he hears the knock, instead of getting all barky and excited, he gets to eat chicken. And so we take apart these trigger scenarios and we teach the dog that he can have a different behavioral response. When the dog is feeling differently, he's going to act differently. So let's just pick apart for a moment two different kinds of aggression that you're most likely to see. There's offensive aggression. Offensive aggression is when the dog is moving forward, going to close the gap. All of his body postures will be very up. You'll see his tail up. You'll often see the hackles up on his back. You'll see his ears forward. He's usually body weight shifted forward, and it means he's coming forward. Usually if you see teeth, you're just going to see those front teeth. You're going to see everything forward. Offensive aggression is very risky for the people because it means the dog is coming forward. He's very likely to close the gap between you, and he is saying, I'm going to take space. I'm going to control that space, and I'll use whatever means I need to in order to control it. Defensive aggression, on the other hand, looks differently. Defensive aggression is the dog who is in that fight or flight mode and he's trapped. And he's saying, give me space, please give me space. I don't want to have to come forward. I want you to just give me the space. His body weight will be shifted back. His ears will be back. You'll often see all of the teeth instead of just the front teeth. And everything about his body is saying, if you will leave me alone, I will leave you alone. When we're talking about shy and fearful dogs, you're going to notice that they will often start out very flat. They're going to lower their bodies to the ground. They're going to try to retreat again in that fight or flight response. They're going to try to get away if they can. And so these are the dogs that end up getting trapped into a corner, for example, or under the bed. Maybe they've taken a toy or something and they're hiding under the bed. Shy and fearful dogs can escalate to either offensive or defensive aggression depending on the scenario and their confidence level. An interesting thing to know is that a dog who experiences success at behaving aggressively, he'll often repeat it. So you'll see an escalation of aggression through the stages of that dog's life. In the beginning, maybe all he was doing was saying, hey, I need some space, and I growled and that worked, and so therefore I'm going to come a little forward. And so I see dogs that are in an approach and retreat conflict, right? They'll come forward and then they'll back up and then they'll come forward. And so what we want to do is help these dogs to come forward in a relaxed manner, or to even just stay where they are, but to be relaxed about it. Now, one more really big component before we get into the nitty-gritty of body language and what to look for is I want to talk about frustration. There's ways that the dogs will feel more frustrated, and as you might imagine, with frustration can increase aggression. So ways that dogs can be frustrated are behind barriers or being held tightly on a leash. And so the biggest fix that you can do is to either remove the barrier or to reduce the tension on a leash. Now that's kind of tricky. If you have a dog who's offered any kind of offensive aggression in the past, you don't want to just take down the barrier or release the dog on the leash. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that you can contribute to the aggression by trying to restrain them and hold them back. I grew up the daughter of a police dog trainer. And I remember when they were training those police dogs to offer aggression because they're teaching them to bite, the key components were the restraint, so they would tie up the dog or hold him back, the frustration, so they would tease him and kind of egg him on, and then they would add just a little bit of pain, not a lot, but just a little to just push him on over the edge. So what you see in a common leashed situation where a dog is exhibiting this sort of reactivity towards other dogs or people, you've got restraint, you've got frustration, and you have a little bit of pain if you've tried to use any kind of a collar that increases pain. One more concept that I want to talk about is I'll hear people say, my dog tried to bite the postman, or he tried to bite the babysitter. And I want to say that if your dog had really wanted to close that gap and make that contact, he would have. We can't move fast enough. If you've ever seen a dog actually make contact, you can be bitten multiple times before you have a chance to even respond, okay? So there is no really tried to bite, unless the dog is being physically restrained, of course. And so tried to bite is a signal that the dog actually was just issuing a very stern warning. Think back to that ladder of aggression that we talked about. And he's saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to bite you, but I've shown you that I'm stressed. I've growled at you. I've tried to tell you in every way that I could that I need more space and you need to give it to me. And now I'm going to snap at the air and tell you one more time before I make contact. So we want to make sure that if the dog has gotten to that level of aggression, that we're making huge changes and we're not allowing him to get to that level. So let's talk a little bit more about the signals that your dog is giving you way before you're getting to growling or air snapping in a situation. I want to teach you an easy acronym to remember, and it's called the BEET, B-E-E-T. And this is just a little acronym that I made up to help my clients understand that they can read their dog's body and they can predict how he's feeling in a certain situation and then make changes as necessary. The first letter in BEET is B, and B stands for body tension. Body tension is when the dog is feeling very tight, right? The very first thing that you'll notice in a dog who's feeling uncomfortable is that just like as in people, he's going to tighten his body up. Now you've seen this, right? If you have a social partner, a friend or your spouse, and they've had a bad day, you're going to be able to see that when you just walk into the room usually, right? Their shoulders are tense, they're really closed in, or maybe they're sitting with their body all closed up. Well, the way the dogs show that is very similar. If you have a dog who normally has a straight top line, that's the line of the spine between his shoulders and his rear end, you're going to see that he's actually going to hunch his body. He's going to look rounded there. He might be trying to retreat, or he might be just frozen stiff. And so what we see is a change in his body. Whereas a relaxed-bodied dog is going to be very open, and you might see that he's standing very loose and wiggly. When he greets you or he greets another dog, he's going to have a nice arched body. There'll be a softness and a suppleness to the way that he's moving. And so tense versus relaxed is kind of the continuum that we're looking at. The more tense a dog is, obviously the more uncomfortable he is. And it's often the first thing that I notice when a dog is making a change from being I'm okay to I'm really not okay, is that body tension. If you notice that the dog has gone from being loose and wiggly to being very stiff and frozen, then you need to make a change in the environment. You might see that the dog is feeling really uncomfortable because a visitor has come in, or maybe he has a bone or something that he wants to hang on to. You'll see his muscles tensing up, and you'll see that he's holding on to that, and that's a risky time. When his body is tense, he's primed for action, and he can change very, very suddenly from I'm going to hold my position to I'm not okay, I'm going to come forward. The second letter in our acronym BEET is expression. And expression is everything forward of the ears. So we're talking about his eyes, his muzzle, his whisker bed, the commissure of his lips, how many teeth are showing, that general area of tension in his cheeks or not, the area above his eyes where he can have little arcs of worry. Everything about the expression. Now, if you look at human expression and compare it to dog expression, it's actually very similar. Dogs have fewer facial muscles than we do, but their expressions are very, very similar. And good scientific research has shown that their emotions are also very similar. There have been some great researchers that are looking into the way that dogs' brains are responding to certain stimuli, and the same areas of pleasure and worry that light up for people's brains when they're feeling happy or worried are lighting up in the dog's brains when they're feeling happy or worried. So we can make some broad statements that the dogs have similar emotions to us, and therefore their expressions are also going to be very similar. If you think your dog looks worried, he probably looks worried, and you should do something to change his emotions so that he can move on. Good expressions look happy. If your dog's mouth is open with a great big lolling tongue, or if he has pulled his lips back and he looks like he's smiling and he's all squinty, he's probably happy, and it's okay. If you're not sure, you can also look at his body tension, and if he's relaxed and showing you all those teeth, then he's probably okay. On the other hand, if you're seeing white in the sides of his eyes, so he looks like he's whale-eyed, think about what a person looks like if they're feeling fearful or worried. They might be, pulled back like that, and they're worried, they're scared. You're going to see the whites of their eyes. You might see on the dog's muzzle, you might see that his lips have gotten very, very tight. You might notice that his whiskers have come forward, or that his nostrils are flaring. All of these things mean that your dog is feeling really uncomfortable, and you need to make some changes in his environment so that he can relax and you can prevent a bite. The next letter in our acronym BEET is the letter E for ears. Now, ears are very telling. The first thing that you need to know is that you need to know what normal looks like for your dog. So start watching those ears. Because ears have so many different shapes, it can be hard to read. Ears that are floppy look very different from ears that are erect. And then you have bulldog ears, and they look completely different all of the time, or whippet ears, and they have a totally different look to their ear. So you need to know what normal looks like for your dog. In general, ears that are forward means the dog wants to come forward. Now there can be a couple different reasons why your dog is coming forward. It might be because he's happy to see you, and it might be because he wants you to get out of this space. So again, context is everything. In general, if the dog's ears are loose and relaxed, kind of in a normal position, then things are good. If his ears are pulled back tight to his head as if he's closing his body off to you, then he's feeling uncomfortable, and you want to make a change so that he can relax. If the dog has opened up his body to you, opened up those ears almost that you could put a little swirly finger in his ear, then he's probably pretty relaxed. Again, it's similar to body tension. If the dog is tight, then he needs more space. If he is worried, you're going to see that, that his ears are either tight or pulled way back. And if it's open or loose and relaxed, it means that he's going to be okay. The last letter in our acronym BEET is the letter T for tail. And tails are very telling. And even if your dog only has a little bitty tail, you can still learn a lot from how he's holding it. Let me ask you a question. Does a wagging tail mean a happy dog? The answer is, it depends. Sometimes the answer is yes, the dog is absolutely happy. When you're coming home from work and he's greeting you and his tail is going in a helicopter situation, then yes, of course he's happy. If the tail is wagging very tight, and you're just seeing it almost vibrating, that the arc of the wag is very, very tight, then he might not be just happy. There's a level of arousal that's going on that could actually mean that he's just about ready to have a confrontation. I've seen a lot of wagging tails happen right before a bite. You have to think a little bit about what those dogs were bred to do, right? Pleasure can come from lots of things, and a lot of time it's just doing what we're bred to do. So a dog who is hunting, for example, right before he grabs the game, his tail's going to be going pretty fast. So wagging is not always happy. The tail is going to tell us the emotion and the arousal state of the dog. If you're seeing wagging and it's a very fast wag, then the dog is very aroused, very excited. Now that could be good or bad. So I also want to look at the arc of the tail, or the arc of the wag, right? If the dog is hitting himself in the side with his tail, that big, wide, sweeping arc, that's a friendly wag, and that's usually going to be okay. If, on the other hand, it's very, very straight up and the tail is just almost vibrating, then that can be a dangerous situation. That dog is very aroused and he's not being socially accepting. He's just saying, I'm very, very excited. So I want you to look at the position of the tail in relation to the spine. And if the dog's tail is even with his spine, that's kind of a neutral position, yeah? So the dog's tail might be wagging at that angle. If it's all the way up and it's, high up over his spine or high up tall, again, that's a dog who might be displaying offensive aggression, and he might be very excited about it. Dogs that are territorial often will have their tails all the way to the top and flagging very high. On the other hand, you might have a dog whose tail is tucked. It might be all the way underneath him, and that tail is actually saying, hey, I need some more space. I'm feeling really uncomfortable here. What's important to know is even if that dog's tail is just a button, just a little tiny bit of a tail, if it's covering his body parts, then he is uncomfortable. Loose and wiggly is good. Tight is never good. So look at that tail position. Look at the tempo of the wag. Again, if it's a higher tempo, very, very fast, the dog is more aroused, more excited, but not necessarily friendly. Now let's cover a few signs of stress in dogs overall so that you can begin to recognize when your dog is feeling uncomfortable. There are some very common signs of stress, and people have a lot of the similar ones as dogs do. A really common one that I see a lot that owners tend to miss is a very fast lick of the nose. And my hypothesis is that the dogs are clearing their scenting ability, right? That's the primary sense of information that the dogs take in is their scent. So if they're clearing their nose, they're giving a quick little swipe to the nose, it means they need more information. And that can happen a lot of times in anxiety or stressful situations. So watch for that nose lick. Another one that you might see is yawning out of context. So the dog will be, and it's really kind of a quick yawn. It's not because he's sleepy, it's because he's feeling all that energy building and he needs to burn some of it off. Another one that you might see is that repetitive scratching. And the dog's not truly itchy, it's just like biting your fingernails or going to a happy place in your mind. It's just something to do. And so if you're seeing your dog all of a sudden get up and start scratching, it might be that he's actually feeling more stressed. grooming out of context. So if suddenly he's very interested in cleaning himself, that can show that he is feeling very uncomfortable and you need to make a change in his environment. A really easy one that I see all the time is just a head turn. The dog will be looking around all of a sudden and then he'll just very obviously turn his head to the side and it's like, I need a break. That shows me that that dog needs more space and more time to deal with the situation. Rapid blinking is another one, or sometimes escalating panting to kind of burn off that excess energy and heat from his blood pressure building up. All of these things can be signs of stress. Sometimes I'll see a dog shake off when he is not wet, right? Or he hasn't just been groomed. I mean, if you've been grooming your dog and then he shakes off to kind of lay his coat flat again, that's different. But if he shakes off right after greeting somebody, that should tell you two things. One, that greeting was really stressful for the dog, and two, he's feeling better now. That shake off is really a reset, but it makes me tune in to what was just happening because that dog was feeling some stress. So now I want to give you a little bit of a quiz. I'm going to show you some pictures, and I want you to gauge whether the dog is safe, everything's okay, you could walk right up to him and scratch him and feed him and everything's fine, or maybe unsafe. There's some caution there, especially if children are involved. We need to stop the interaction and take a moment and help that dog feel more comfortable. Are you ready to vote? Let's go. So here we have this little dachshund, and he's showing us a particular facial expression. What do you think, safe or unsafe? If you guessed unsafe, you are correct. Now let's talk about why. The first thing that I notice here is that his pupils are really dilated. That means that he's super aroused. He is very, very worried about what's happening. The next thing we'll notice is that his ears are pulled way back tight to his head. He is displaying the front teeth only. So he is showing what's called an agonistic pucker. And it means you better give me some space or I'm going to come tell you why. So this dog would be unsafe. We need to do something to help this little guy out and help him feel more comfortable in his situation. Let's take another picture. What do you think? Safe or unsafe? This one also is unsafe. And so this dog is feeling really uncomfortable in this situation. He has turned his head to the side, his body weight is shifted back, his ears are pulled back, his mouth is tight, his pupils are dilated, he's got his paw lifted saying, hey, I need some help here. And he is absolutely doing everything he can to ask for some space while these hands come forward with this leash. This is an unsafe situation. A better way to handle this would be to back up and ask the dog to come closer to you, maybe to offer him some treats to help him relax before leashing him. Let's try another one. How about this? Is this safe or unsafe? This one's a little bit tricky. You might initially say, well, he's taking a treat, so he's probably okay, and that's probably true. He might be okay in this moment. But take a closer look at how tight his muzzle is and look at his eyes. Are you seeing the white in his eye? That says he's pretty uncomfortable in this situation. He might take that treat, but then he might, if that hand lingers, he might actually take a little bite as well. It would be better to feed this dog from the ground, so just tossing the treat on the floor would be a much better way than giving the dog an opportunity to actually back away. I might throw some food so he can get some space and then decide whether he wants to come forward again. Lots of dogs end up biting people when they're feeding them a treat, and then the dog feels too uncomfortable because they lingered too long into their space bubble. This dog needs more space. Let's try another one. Safe or unsafe? Now some people would look at this picture and say, well, that's a big German Shepherd and he's very close to that lady's face. It's got to be unsafe. But nope, this one's safe. Obviously these two have a very caring and loving relationship, and let's look at the body postures. First of all, the dog is accepting the touch of the person and feeling relaxed. He's giving her a kiss on the chin, and he's saying, I want to be in your space. The biggest clue to how this dog feels right now is his eyes. See how squinty he is? He is enjoying this interaction. This is safe. How about this guy? Safe or unsafe? Remember I said if a dog looks worried, he probably is? This dog is unsafe in this moment just because he's worried. Now, does that mean that he's going to lunge forward and bite? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying this dog is worried. He's feeling uncomfortable. Look at the expression. His lips are tight, his eyes are big and wide, you can see the whites of them, and he has those little worry arrows right over the top of his eyes. All of that says he's concerned about this interaction and we need to give him some more space, some more time, and possibly some treats. Now you know how to read the beat. Body tension, expression, ears, and tail. Now go take a look at your own dog and be sure to check in with him frequently because as you know, emotions can change in any given moment. Just like you can have a good day or a bad day, your dog can too. And if several triggers have happened during the course of a day, he might be more prone to feeling uncomfortable with any one trigger in his daily interactions. So help your dogs to feel more comfortable. And if I can be of help to you, I'm happy to do so. We do behavior consultations at Willamette Humane Society, and I'd be happy to help your dogs feel more comfortable with whatever triggers they're experiencing. So if you notice that your dog is feeling uncomfortable, don't just let it go. Be sure and help them to feel more comfortable, and they will become more safe as you work to change their emotional state. Come on down to Willamette Humane Society on Turner Road in Salem, Oregon. We'd be happy to help you understand your dog more and to enjoy him more. Thank you for tuning in today.
Ready? Go. Yeah, sounds like that. This is a great as soon as she goes there, and then she so funny too.
Hi, buddy. Hi, honey.